Subscribe to Infidelity Tales Lab. Now, let's begin. The international terminal at LAX buzzed with reunions and tearful embraces, but Greg Evans stood alone with his duffel bag, scanning the crowd for faces he wouldn't find. 7 years. 7 years of brutal 12-hour shifts on Qatari construction sites, breathing concrete dust and desert heat, sending every spare dollar back home. The text from Jennifer had been brief. "Don't bother picking us up. Take an Uber." He should have seen the signs then. The Uber wound through Pacific Palisades as sunset painted the mansion's gold. Greg's calloused hands, permanently stained with concrete residue, gripped his phone where the property deed glowed on the screen. $3 million. Every cent earned through sweat and sacrifice, spent on this Mediterranean-style estate with ocean views and imported Italian marble. He'd bought it sight unseen 2 years ago, trusting Jennifer's assurances that it was perfect for their family. The driver pulled through the iron gates. Greg's breath caught the place was even more stunning than the photos. Bougainvillea cascaded over ivory walls. A fountain danced in the circular driveway, and through the massive windows, he could see crystal chandeliers that probably cost more than his first car. He paid the driver and shouldered his bag, noting the gleaming Mercedes and Lexus in the driveway. His texts and calls during the flight had gone unanswered, but he'd chalked it up to time zones and excitement. Now, standing before the ornate double doors of his own home, something twisted in his gut. The door was locked. He rang the bell. Footsteps. Then the doors swung open. A man in his 60s stood there, fit, silver-haired, wearing an expensive polo shirt and an expression of pure annoyance. Greg recognized him from video calls. Charles Robison, Jennifer's father. But recognition didn't extend to welcome. "Can I help you?" Charles asked, his tone suggesting Greg was an unwanted solicitor. "I'm Greg, Jennifer's husband. I live here." He kept his voice level, though heat crept up his neck. Charles's eyes flickered. "Oh, right. Jennifer mentioned you were coming back." He didn't move from the doorway. "She's at the spa. I'm watching the place." "Watching the place?" Greg repeated slowly. "I bought this place. I'm the owner." "Technically, yes." Charles stepped aside with obvious reluctance. "Though you've been gone a while. Things have settled into a routine." The entrance hall stole Greg's breath despite his growing unease. Marble floors, a sweeping staircase, artwork that belonged in museums. His 7 years of hell had bought this. But the pride died as he noticed details. Expensive men's shoes by the door, multiple pairs, all larger than his size. Cigar smoke lingering in the air. No photos of him or Miranda anywhere. "Where's my daughter?" Greg dropped his bag. His construction worker frame suddenly very still, very focused. "The girl? Kitchen. Probably. She's been helping out." Charles waved dismissively toward the back of the house. "The girl. Helping out." The words detonated in Greg's mind, but he moved past Charles without comment, his boots echoing on the marble. Through the vast living room with its white furniture and ocean views, past the dining room with a table that could seat 12, into the chef's kitchen with professional-grade appliances. Miranda stood at the sink, her back to him, scrubbing a pot that looked too heavy for her thin arms. She wore a faded t-shirt and old jeans, nothing like the designer clothes he'd sent money for. Her black hair, so much like his own, was pulled into a messy ponytail. "Miranda?" She spun around, the pot clattering into the sink. For a heartbeat, they stared at each other, father and daughter, strangers bound by blood and 7 years of distance. Then her face crumpled. "Daddy?" The word came out broken, disbelieving. She took a step toward him, then stopped, glancing back toward where Charles had disappeared. Fear crossed her features, actual fear, and that's when Greg saw them. Rope marks. Angry red welts circling both her delicate wrists. The world tilted. His vision tunneled. Every muscle in his body coiled like a spring as Miranda rushed forward and grabbed his arm with both hands, her nails digging in with desperate strength. "Daddy, please." Tears streamed down her 12-year-old face. "Please save me. Please don't leave again." Greg's hands that had lifted steel beams and poured foundations, hands that had survived 7 years of brutal labor, shook as he gently gripped his daughter's shoulders. "Baby, what happened to your wrists?" I was being punished. Grandpa Charles said I didn't clean the pool furniture right, so he..." She glanced toward the doorway again. Terror obvious. They tie me up sometimes. In the laundry room. When I'm bad. Black spots danced in Greg's vision. The rage that surged through him was volcanic, apocalyptic, but 7 years in hostile foreign countries had taught him iron control. He forced himself to breathe, to speak calmly even as murder screamed through his veins. Who else knows about this? He kept his voice gentle for Miranda's sake. Nobody. Grandpa says if I tell anyone, they'll take me away and put me in foster care where it's worse. Mom. Miranda's voice cracked. Mom doesn't care. She lets him do it. Sometimes she watches. Jennifer. His wife. The woman he'd married 13 years ago. The woman who'd cried when he left for Qatar, promising to take care of their baby girl. The woman who'd become a stranger through video calls and increasingly distant texts. Footsteps approached. Greg straightened, putting himself between Miranda and the doorway as Charles reappeared, now holding a tumbler of what looked like expensive scotch. Oh good, you found her. Charles sipped his drink. Miranda, finish those dishes. Your mother will be home soon, and you know how she gets when the kitchen isn't spotless. Greg felt Miranda flinch behind him. His hands, still resting on her shoulders, tightened protectively. My daughter won't be finishing anything. We're going to talk. Privately. Charles's expression hardened. Listen, friend. I don't know what Jennifer told you about how things work here, but this is my house. Greg's voice could have cut steel. That is my daughter. And you're going to explain why she has rope burns on her wrists, or I'm calling the police right now. The police? Charles laughed, actually laughed. Go ahead. Call them. Your wife has legal custody while you were overseas. I'm her father, living here at her invitation. And as for Miranda, well, she's a difficult child who requires firm discipline. Any judge would understand. The casual way he said it requires firm discipline while sipping scotch in a mansion bought with Greg's money. The absolute certainty that he'd face no consequences. Greg pulled out his phone. Charles's smirk faltered. What are you doing? Exactly what you suggested. Greg kept his voice level as he photographed Miranda's wrists, her tear-stained face, the kitchen where she'd been working. Calling for help. You're right that I need to understand the legal situation. So, I'm going to get a lawyer. Tonight. You can't afford a lawyer. Charles scoffed. All your money went into this house. A cold smile touched Greg's lips. I earned $3 million in 7 years. The house cost $2. Where do you think the other $1 million went? For the first time, uncertainty crossed Charles's face. He set down his scotch glass with a click. Jennifer handles the finances. I'm sure she does. Greg guided Miranda toward the door. Come on, baby. Let's go get your things. She's not going anywhere. Charles moved to block their path, and Greg saw it in the genuine belief that he owned this situation. That Greg was an intruder who could be dismissed. This isn't your house anymore, not really. Jennifer has power of attorney. The courts will side with the parent who was actually here. You abandoned your family. The accusation hung in the air. Greg had heard it before, in his own mind during lonely nights in Qatar. Abandonment. But he'd left to provide, to build a future. And this was what his sacrifice had bought. Step aside, Greg said quietly. This is your only warning. Something in his tone, maybe the 7 years of hard living. Maybe the absolute zero tolerance in his eyes made Charles hesitate. He stepped aside. Greg led Miranda upstairs, his hand never leaving her shoulder. The second floor was as opulent as the first, but he barely noticed. Which room is yours, baby? Miranda pointed to a door at the end of the hall, the smallest room. He noted, while the master suite and what were clearly guest rooms dominated the space. Inside, his heart broke further. A twin bed with worn sheets. A single small dresser. Bare walls. No toys, no books. Nothing that suggested a child lived here. The room was more like servants' quarters than a daughter's bedroom in a $3 million mansion. Pack what you need, he said gently. We're leaving tonight. Where will we go? Hope and fear warred in her voice. Hotel. For now. Then, somewhere safe. He pulled out his phone again while she gathered her few possessions. The first call went to voicemail. He tried again. This time, a gravelly voice answered. Greg? That you, brother? Hal. Relief flooded through him. Hal Buchanan. They'd served together before Greg left for civilian life in Qatar. Hal had gone a different direction after the service, one that involved skills of a particular nature. I need help. Tonight. Where are you? Greg gave the address. And Hal? Bring Alan. A pause. Alan Randall was Hal's associate, a lawyer who specialized in the kind of cases that required discretion and ruthlessness. That kind of situation, worse than you can imagine. 30 minutes. The line went dead. Miranda was zipping up a small backpack when the front door opened downstairs. A woman's voice called out, pitched high with artificial cheer. Charles? I'm home. Did you pick up the wine I wanted? Jennifer. After 7 years, his wife had returned. Greg took Miranda's hand and headed for the stairs. Jennifer stood in the entrance hall, shopping bags from Rodeo Drive clustered around her designer heels. She'd changed blonde highlights streaked through her dark hair, her figure maintained through what were clearly expensive gym sessions and possibly surgery. Diamond earrings caught the light. A Cartier watch gleamed on her wrist. This was not the woman he'd married, the young mother who'd worked as a nurse and worn scrubs more often than dresses. Her eyes widened when she saw him. Greg? Oh my God, you're here. The surprise seemed genuine, but there was no rush to embrace him, no tears of joy. Instead, she glanced at Miranda, clutching her backpack, then at Charles hovering near the living room with an expression Greg couldn't quite read. We need to talk, Greg said. Jennifer's smile was bright and empty. Of course. Let me just put these bags down. Charles, be a dear and take them to my room? She turned back to Greg. You look so different, more muscular. All that construction work. I guess. Jennifer. He descended the last few stairs, Miranda, a shadow behind him. Why does our daughter have rope marks on her wrists? The smile didn't falter, but something shifted in her eyes, calculation replacing surprise. Oh, that. Miranda, honey, why don't you go to your room? The adults need to talk. She stays with me. Greg's tone allowed no argument. Jennifer's expression cooled. Greg, you've been gone 7 years. You don't understand how things are now. Miranda has been having behavioral issues. Behavioral issues that require tying her up? She's difficult. Jennifer's voice sharpened. You weren't here. You don't get to walk in after all this time and judge me. I was working, earning the money that bought this house. That pays for your shopping trips. He gestured at the designer bags. That's a $20,000 watch you're wearing, Jennifer. Where did that come from? The accounts you set up. I'm your wife. I have access to pay for necessities, for Miranda's care and education. Not for diamonds while she sleeps in a room that looks like a closet. Charles emerged from upstairs, and the two of them, wife and father, exchanged a look. Jennifer's mask of pleasantry dropped entirely. You think you can come back and take over? She laughed, but there was an edge of hysteria in it. This is my house. I've lived here, maintained it, made it what it is. You were just gone. A signature on checks. Checks that built all this. Money isn't presents, Greg. You chose to leave. You chose Qatar over your family. The words hit like physical blows, designed to wound. And they might have worked if not for Miranda's small hand in his, if not for the rope marks on her wrists, if not for the absolute wrongness of this entire situation. I chose to provide, he said quietly. You chose to abuse our daughter. Abuse? Jennifer's voice went shrill. She's fed, clothed, housed in a mansion. Do you know what real abuse looks like? She's fine. She has rope burns. She's terrified. She begged me to save her. She's manipulative. Jennifer stabbed a finger toward Miranda, who flinched. She tells lies, makes up stories for attention. You'd know that if you were here. The doorbell rang. Greg felt something settle in his chest, cold, hard, absolute. He'd given Jennifer chances in this conversation. Multiple opportunities to show remorse, concern, anything human. Instead, she'd revealed exactly who she'd become. I'll get it, he said. Charles moved to intercept him. This is still my daughter's house. You don't. Greg's hand shot out, gripping Charles's wrist with the strength of 7 years of manual labor. He applied just enough pressure for the older man to feel bone grinding against bone. Touch me or my daughter again, and you'll wish you hadn't. He released Charles and opened the door. Hal Buchanan stood on the threshold 6-3, built like a brick wall, with close-cropped gray hair and eyes that had seen too much. Beside him, Alan Randall cut a different figure, lean, intense, carrying a briefcase and an expression of barely controlled fury. Greg. Hal's handshake was firm. His gaze swept past to Jennifer and Charles, assessment automatic and complete. Heard you needed assistance. Come in. Greg stepped aside. This is my house, after all. Alan was already photographing everything with his phone, Miranda's wrists, the opulent furnishings, Jennifer's designer outfit. Mr. Evans, I'm going to need a detailed statement from you and your daughter. But first, I need to make something very clear to everyone present. He turned to Jennifer and Charles, and his voice could have frozen nitrogen. I'm Alan Randall, attorney at law. As of this moment, any financial accounts in Mrs. Evans's name that are funded by Mr. Evans's earnings are frozen, pending investigation. Any attempts to withdraw or transfer funds will result in criminal charges. The deed to this property is in Mr. Evans's name solely. I checked on the way over, which means you're currently guests in his home. Unwelcome guests. Jennifer's face went white. You can't. I can, and I have. The paperwork was filed electronically 10 minutes ago. Alan pulled out his tablet, showing a legal document. Mr. Evans has also filed for emergency custody based on evidence of child endangerment. The court date is Monday morning. This is insane. Charles stepped forward. Jennifer has been the sole caregiver. Sole caregiver? Hal's voice was deceptively mild as he moved further into the house, his presence filling the space. Is that what we're calling it when a 12-year-old has rope burns from being tied up as punishment? The silence that followed was broken by Miranda's soft sob. Greg pulled her close, feeling her shake against him. Jennifer found her voice, though it trembled. Get out. All of you. This is my home. No. The word came from Greg, final as a gunshot. This is my home. I have the deed, the mortgage in my name, the proof of every dollar I earned and sent back. You and your father are going to pack your things and leave. Tonight. We'll fight this. Charles snarled. We'll take everything. You abandoned them. I have 7 years of wire transfers. Bank records. Every text message and email where I asked about Miranda and got vague responses. Every video call where you conveniently had her in bed or at a friend's house. Greg's voice was eerily calm. I have neighbors I'm going to talk to, teachers who might have noticed things, doctors who'll examine those rope marks. I have resources you can't imagine, and I have friends who specialize in making problems disappear. The last words hung heavy with implication. Hal's slight smile confirmed the threat. Jennifer's bravado cracked. Greg, please. We can work this out. It's been a misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding was mine. Thinking you were the woman I married. Trusting you with our daughter and our future. He shook his head. You have 1 hour to pack and leave, or I have Hal escort you out with nothing but the clothes on your back. You can't do this. Jennifer's voice rose to a shriek. I'll call the police. Alan held up his phone. Please do. I'm sure they'll be interested in the photos of your daughter's injuries. The discrepancy between funds sent for her care and her actual living conditions, and the fact that you're currently occupying a property you have no legal right to. The fight drained from Jennifer's face. She looked at her father, then at Greg, and something ugly twisted her features. You'll regret this. Both of you. You think you can just take everything I've built? You built nothing, Greg said quietly. You stole, and you abused. Now you pay. Charles grabbed Jennifer's arm. Come on. We'll get a lawyer. Fight this properly. This isn't over. Actually, Alan said pleasantly, it very much is. Tick-tock, folks. 57 minutes remaining. They fled upstairs, Jennifer's sobs echoing through the mansion. Greg held Miranda as she cried, 7 years of separation and suffering pouring out of her small frame. Hal stood watch by the stairs while Alan made calls, arranging additional security and documentation. You okay, brother? Hal asked quietly when Jennifer and Charles's frantic packing could be heard above. Not even close, Greg admitted. But I will be, once she's safe. Miranda looked up at him, tears still streaming. They said you wouldn't come back, that you didn't care anymore. Baby, he cupped her face gently. I never stopped caring. Not for 1 second. Every foundation I poured, every beam I lifted, it was all for you. All of it. I missed you so much. I'm here now, and I promise you, they will never hurt you again. Above, something shattered Jennifer throwing things, perhaps, or Charles's rage finding an outlet. Greg didn't care. Let them break whatever they wanted. It was all replaceable. His daughter wasn't. 43 minutes later, Jennifer and Charles emerged with suitcases, their faces masks of fury and humiliation. Jennifer tried one last time at the door. Greg, please, don't do this. I'm your wife. We took vows you broke when you let your father torture our child. His voice held no forgiveness. You're dead to me, Jennifer. Both of you. Charles's face purpled. You self-righteous bastard. You think you're so much better? You think money gives you the right? Money I earned, Greg interrupted, with my hands and my sweat. Money you stole and spent while abusing my daughter. Get out. Hal opened the door. They had no choice but to leave, dragging their designer luggage across the imported marble out into the night that had swallowed their kingdom. The door closed. Locked. Deadbolted. Greg exhaled for what felt like the first time in hours and looked down at Miranda. You hungry, baby? She nodded, and he realized he had no idea what was in the house to eat, where anything was, how to navigate this palace he'd bought sight unseen. Pizza, he suggested, and we can talk about everything. Anything you want to know. Can I ask, are you staying? Really staying? He knelt down to her level, taking both her small hands in his scarred ones. I'm never leaving you again. Ever. That's a promise. She threw herself into his arms, and Greg held his daughter while Hal and Alan exchanged satisfied looks. The first battle was won, but Greg's mind was already working, planning. Because this wasn't over. Jennifer and Charles had spent 7 years building their castle of lies and cruelty. And Greg was going to spend however long it took tearing it down to the foundation. 3 days passed in a blur of lawyers, doctors, and Child Protective Services interviews. Miranda's rope burns were documented, photographed, and entered into evidence. Neighbors testified to seeing the girl doing yard work in the heat while Jennifer lunched with friends. Teachers reported absences and a withdrawn demeanor. The case against Jennifer and Charles built like a tsunami. But Greg wanted more than legal victory. He wanted them to feel what Miranda had felt, trapped, helpless, watching their world crumble around them. He sat in Alan's downtown office on a Tuesday morning. Miranda, safely with a child therapist Hal had recommended. The lawyer slid a folder across his desk. Financial records for the past 2 years. Your wife has been busy. Greg opened it. Page after page of expenditures, withdrawals, transfers. The numbers made his vision blur. $400,000 in 2 years. Designer clothes, jewelry, spa treatments. A country club membership. Payments to Charles' rent, he claimed, though he lived in a mansion. A personal trainer. A luxury car lease. And at the bottom, highlighted in yellow, regular payments to someone named Roberto Barnes. Who's that? Greg asked. Alan's expression went cold. Her boyfriend. He's been living in the guest house. The words hit Greg like a sledgehammer. What? You have a guest house? Pool house, technically. Roberto Barnes, age 34, personal trainer at your wife's country club. He's been her companion for approximately 18 months. Your money has been subsidizing their relationship. Greg's hands clenched on the folder, crumpling the pages. 7 years. 7 years of brutal work, dangerous conditions, loneliness that ate at his soul. And Jennifer had been playing house with her boyfriend, spending his money, abusing his daughter. Where is he now? Greg's voice was dangerously quiet. Still in the guest house, as far as I know. We didn't have legal grounds to evict him. He's not on the primary property deed. He's living in my guest house. Technically, yes. Greg stood. I'm going home. Greg. Alan's tone held warning. Nothing illegal. You have the legal high ground. Don't throw it away. I'm going to have a conversation. That's all. Hal, who'd been silent until now, stirred. Want company? No. Greg met his friend's eyes. But stay close to your phone. The drive back to Pacific Palisades gave him time to think, to plan. The rage that had consumed him when he found Miranda was gone, replaced by something colder, more calculated. In Qatar, he'd learned patience. He'd learned that revenge, served properly, required preparation. The mansion looked serene in the afternoon sun. the fountain dancing, bougainvillea swaying in the ocean breeze. Greg let himself in, noting that the security system hadn't been changed, yet another item on his list. He walked through the silent house to the back windows. Past the pool, partially hidden by landscaping, sat the guest house. Lights were on. Music thumped, something bass-heavy and obnoxious. Greg crossed the immaculate lawn, his work boots leaving impressions in the perfect grass. He didn't knock on the guest house door. He owned the property. He used his key. Roberto Barnes looked up from a leather couch, Greg's couch, bought with Greg's money, a protein shake in one hand and a phone in the other. He was exactly what Greg expected. Sculpted, tan, wearing designer workout clothes, and an expression of startled entitlement. "Who the hell are you?" Roberto demanded, setting down his shake and standing. He was tall, fit, probably used to intimidating people with his size. "I'm Greg Evans, the owner of this property. Who the hell are you?" Recognition dawned on Roberto's face, followed by a smirk that made Greg's fist itch. "Oh, the husband. Jenny said you might show up eventually." "Jenny?" Greg stepped further into the guest house, noting the expensive gym equipment, the designer clothes hanging in the open closet. The photos on the wall, Roberto with Jennifer, laughing, toasting champagne, living the life Greg's money had bought. "That's interesting, because Jennifer's my wife." "Was my wife?" "Was?" Roberto's smirk widened. "She finally divorced you?" "About time. She deserves better than some construction worker who abandoned her." The casual disrespect, the absolute ignorance of what he'd been part of it, took every ounce of Greg's control not to put Roberto through the window. "Let me explain something to you," Greg said, his voice conversational. "I worked 7 years overseas, 12-hour days, 6 days a week, in conditions that would break most men. I did it to provide for my wife and daughter. I sent home $3 million. $1 million of that was meant for my daughter's care and education." He stepped closer. Roberto, despite his size, instinctively retreated. "Instead, my wife and her father used my daughter as a servant. They tied her up and left her in a laundry room when she misbehaved. While you were here, living off my money, sleeping with my wife in the home I bought. My 12-year-old daughter had rope burns on her wrists." Roberto's face palled. "I didn't know. You didn't ask." Greg's voice could have cut glass. "You took the money, took the luxury, took the woman, and never once wondered about the kid you probably saw doing chores while you were poolside. Listen, man, you're just leaving. Now. You have 10 minutes to pack whatever you can carry and get off my property. Anything you leave behind becomes mine." Roberto's shock morphed to anger. "You can't kick me out. I have rights?" Jenny said. Jenny lied. "She's been lying to everyone." "And you?" Greg smiled, and it wasn't pleasant. "You're an accomplice to child abuse. My lawyer has already documented your presence here, your relationship with Jennifer, the money spent on you from accounts meant for child support. You want to fight this, we can involve the police. Or you can take the out I'm giving you and disappear." The color had drained completely from Roberto's face. "Child abuse? I never touched the kid. But you knew she was here. You lived 20 feet from the main house. You knew, and you did nothing." Greg checked his watch. 9 minutes now. Roberto scrambled for his phone, likely calling Jennifer. Greg didn't stop him. He stood in the doorway, implacable, while Roberto pleaded into the phone, his voice rising with panic. Whatever Jennifer said, it wasn't reassuring. Roberto's face crumbled. "She hung up on me," he whispered, staring at his phone. "Shocking," Greg said dryly. "Jennifer uses people. When they're no longer useful, she discards them. Ask me how I know." Roberto looked at him, really looked, and something like understanding crossed his features. "She played me. She played everyone. The difference is, I'm the one who owns this place. You're just another expense I'm cutting." Greg gestured at the door. 6 minutes. Start packing." What followed was almost pathetic. Roberto threw clothes into a gym bag, grabbed his laptop and phone charger, cast anguished looks at the expensive equipment he'd have to leave behind. Greg watched, unmoved. This man had lived in luxury while Miranda suffered. Sympathy was in short supply. "Where am I supposed to go?" Roberto asked at the door, his bag overflowing with designer labels. "Not my problem. Greg pulled out his phone and snapped a photo of Roberto's face. But I'd suggest somewhere far from here. And if I see you near my family again, we'll have a very different conversation. Roberto fled, practically running across the lawn to a Tesla also leased with Greg's money, probably. Greg watched him speed through the gates, tires squealing. Then he turned back to the guest house and methodically began cataloging everything inside. The furniture, the equipment, the clothes, the electronics, all bought with diverted funds. All evidence. His phone rang. Jennifer? He answered with, "Your boyfriend just left." Crying. "You bastard!" Her voice was shrill with panic. "You can't do this." Roberto was. "Your lover? Living off my money while you abused our daughter?" "Yes, I'm aware." Greg kept his tone pleasant. "He's gone. And before you ask, no, you can't come back for his things. They're evidence now." "Evidence of what?" "Misappropriation of child support funds. Possible fraud. Alan's building quite the case." He paused. "How's the hotel, by the way? I heard you checked into the Four Seasons. Still spending money you don't have?" Silence. Then, "The accounts are frozen. We can barely afford. Not my problem anymore." He ended the call. The phone rang again immediately. He declined it. It rang again. He blocked the number. In the silence that followed, Greg stood in the guest house that had sheltered his wife's betrayal and felt something settle in his chest. This was just the beginning. Jennifer and Charles thought they understood consequences. They thought losing the house and their lifestyle was punishment. They had no idea what was coming. The emergency custody hearing on Monday morning was brutal but brief. Miranda's testimony, given to the judge in chambers, with Greg waiting outside, lasted 40 minutes. When she emerged, red-eyed but composed, the judge called both parties back in. Judge Dorothy Spaulding was in her 60s, a no-nonsense woman with steel-gray hair and the kind of eyes that had seen every lie and manipulation. She looked at Jennifer with barely concealed disgust. "Mrs. Evans, I've reviewed the evidence, examined the child's injuries, and heard her testimony. This court finds credible evidence of child abuse, neglect, and financial exploitation." Her voice was ice. "Emergency full custody is granted to Mr. Greg Evans, effective immediately. You are permitted supervised visitation only, pending a full investigation by Child Protective Services." Jennifer shot to her feet. Her lawyer, a harried-looking man named Ted Calhoun, who'd clearly taken the case reluctantly, trying to calm her. "Your Honor, this is outrageous. I'm her mother. 7 years I raised her alone while he was gone. 7 years you abused her while spending her father's money on yourself and your paramour," Judge Spaulding interrupted. 7 years you allowed your father to restrain a minor child as punishment. 7 years you cashed support checks while providing substandard care. Sit down, Mrs. Evans, before I hold you in contempt." Jennifer collapsed into her chair, mascara running. Charles, sitting behind her, looked like he'd aged 10 years. "Furthermore," the judge continued, "this court is ordering a complete audit of all accounts associated with funds sent by Mr. Evans for his daughter's care. Any discrepancies will be reported to the appropriate authorities." She turned to Greg. "Mr. Evans, you have full legal and physical custody. The Child Welfare Office will conduct a home visit within the week, but given the circumstances, I don't foresee any issues." "Thank you, Your Honor," Greg said quietly. Outside the courthouse, Miranda grabbed his hand as reporters, somehow they'd gotten wind of the case, shouted questions. Hal appeared from nowhere, his bulk creating a barrier that guided them to a waiting car. Alan dealt with the press, his statement concise and damning. In the car, Miranda was quiet until they'd left downtown behind. Then, "Did I do okay?" telling the judge. "You did perfect, baby." Greg squeezed her hand. "You were so brave. Grandpa Charles always said if I told anyone, they'd take me away. But the judge didn't take me away. She said, I could stay with you. And that's exactly where you're staying. Forever." She smiled, the first real smile he'd seen from her, and rested her head against his arm. "Can we get ice cream?" "We can get whatever you want." They stopped at a small ice cream shop in Santa Monica, far from the courthouse and the drama. Miranda ordered cookie dough with sprinkles, attacking it with the enthusiasm of a kid who'd been denied simple pleasures for too long. Greg watched her, his heart aching for the years he'd missed, the suffering he hadn't known about. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You think you've won? You've just made an enemy. This isn't over. Charles. Or Jennifer using her father's phone. Greg deleted it without responding. They wanted a reaction. They wanted him rattled. They'd have to try harder. That evening, back at the mansion, Greg cooked dinner, simple pasta and marinara, nothing fancy, but Miranda ate like she was starving. Probably because she had been. Greg realized with fresh rage. The doctors had noted she was underweight for her age. Dad. Miranda poked at her pasta. Can I ask you something? Anything. Why did Mom change? She used to be nice. Before you left, she was different. Greg set down his fork, choosing his words carefully. Sometimes people change when they get things they've always wanted. Your mom always talked about living in a big house, having money, being comfortable. When I started sending money home, I think it changed her. Brought out parts of herself that were always there, but hidden. She started dating Roberto like 2 years ago. Miranda said quietly. I heard them talking once. He said they should just get rid of me, send me to boarding school. Mom said she'd think about it. The fork bent in Greg's grip. He carefully set it down, his hands shaking. Baby, I'm so sorry. If I'd known, you couldn't know. They made sure you didn't. Miranda looked up at him with eyes too old for her age. But you came back. You saved me. And I'm going to make sure they can never hurt anyone else. Something flickered across her face, satisfaction. Maybe, or justice. Good. They finished dinner in comfortable silence, then watched a movie Miranda had wanted to see for months but had never been allowed. Greg let her fall asleep on the couch, her head on his shoulder, before carrying her up to the master bedroom, his room now, though it felt strange to sleep in the bed Jennifer had shared with Roberto. Tomorrow he'd move Miranda to a better room, redecorate, make this house feel like home instead of a monument to betrayal. Tonight, he had calls to make. Hal answered on the first ring. How'd it go? Full custody. Supervised visitation only. Good. And the other thing? In motion. Greg glanced at the closed door where Miranda slept. I need you to dig deeper. Find everything. Bank accounts, boyfriends, debts, secrets, Charles too. I want to know every dirty detail. What are you planning? Justice. Greg's voice was cold. The court gave me custody. That's not enough. I want them destroyed. Be careful, brother. Revenge can eat you up. This isn't revenge. It's protection. As long as they're out there, they're a threat to Miranda. I need to know they can never hurt her again. Hal was silent for a moment. I'll make some calls. Give me 3 days. Thanks. Greg ended the call and moved to the window. The ocean stretched dark beyond the cliff, waves catching moonlight. Jennifer and Charles were out there somewhere, probably plotting their comeback. Let them plot. Let them scheme. Greg had spent 7 years building foundations that would last centuries. He could certainly spend a few months destroying 2 people who deserved it. The nightmare, as he'd promised, had just begun. But this time, he was the one controlling the darkness. Hal called on Thursday morning with information that made Greg's blood run cold. They met at a coffee shop in Venice Beach, far from prying eyes. Hal slid a thick folder across the table. You're not going to like this. Greg opened it. Bank statements, credit card records, phone logs. But it was the photographs that stopped him cold. Jennifer. And Roberto. Yes, but also Jennifer with other men. Restaurants. Hotels. A yacht off Catalina. And payments. Lots of payments. Your wife has expensive taste in more than just shoes. Hal said quietly. She's been running what amounts to a high-end escort operation. Rich men. Married men. Paying for a company. Roberto was just a live-in boyfriend. Her real income came from these encounters. Greg's hands trembled. Using my money to fund a lifestyle that attracted wealthy clients. The country club membership, the designer clothes, the body work, all investments in her side business. Hal pointed to a highlighted section. She's pulled in over $600,000 in the past 18 months alone. Cash payments, gifts, wire transfers to offshore accounts. Does Charles know? He's her pimp. Hal's expression was grim. He arranges the meetings, handles the money, provides cover stories. Father-daughter criminal enterprise. Greg sat back, the coffee shop noise fading to white noise. His wife, the mother of his child, While he'd been breaking his back in the desert, she'd been selling herself to wealthy men and using Miranda as unpaid household labor. There's more. Hal pulled out another sheet. Charles has a record. Did time in the 90s for fraud. Changed his name, he was originally Charles Dunbar. The Robeson name is fake, bought identity. Jennifer probably doesn't even know her real last name. Why? He stole from his business partners, fled before trial, disappeared for a decade, resurfaced as Charles Robeson when the statute of limitations ran out on some of the charges. He's been running small cons ever since investment schemes, fake charities. Jennifer's operation is just his latest. Greg looked at the photos again. Jennifer smiling at a gray-haired man in his 60s. Charles in the background, watching. A transaction disguised as romance. They saw me coming, Greg said slowly. Saw a military guy with no family, making good money overseas. An easy mark. Jennifer married you before Qatar. Before the money. But Charles appeared right after I left. Moved in to help Jennifer. The pieces clicked into place. He saw the opportunity. Convinced her to use the situation. And Miranda was in the way. A reminder of legitimate family life. Something to hide from the clients. Hal's jaw clenched. They're sociopaths, Greg. Both of them. Greg closed the folder. His mind was racing, planning. Can we prove the escort work? Some of it. I have testimony from 2 of her regulars, both married. Both willing to talk quietly, if it means avoiding public exposure. They thought she was a widow. Had no idea about you or Miranda. And Charles's identity fraud. Harder to prove after all this time, but the authorities would be interested, especially combined with the child abuse charges and financial fraud. Hal leaned forward. You've got enough to bury them legally, Greg, but I know that look. You want more. I want them to feel it. The way Miranda felt it, trapped and helpless. Greg met his friend's eyes. Legal consequences are just the beginning. What did you have in mind? Over the next hour, Greg laid out his plan. It was ruthless, calculated, and possibly illegal in some aspects. Hal listened without judgment, occasionally nodding or suggesting modifications. By the time they finished, they had something that would systematically destroy Jennifer and Charles's lives. This could backfire, Hal warned. Then I'll deal with it. But they don't get to walk away. Not from this. Hal studied him for a long moment. 7 years ago, you were a good man. Soft, maybe. Too trusting. 7 years in Qatar teaches you who you really are and what you're capable of. Just don't lose yourself in this. Miranda needs her father, not a monster. I'm not becoming a monster. I'm becoming what they made necessary. The plan began simply. Greg hired a private investigator named Daryl Bass, a former LAPD detective who specialized in infidelity cases. Daryl's job was to document everything, every meeting Jennifer had with her clients, every transaction Charles arranged, every lie they told. Within a week, Daryl had enough footage to make Jennifer infamous. Greg watched the videos in Alan's office, his expression carved from stone. Jennifer laughing with a real estate mogul. Jennifer accepting an envelope of cash from a plastic surgeon. Jennifer disappearing into a hotel room at the peninsula, emerging 3 hours later with her hair mussed and her makeup smeared. This destroys her reputation, Alan said. But Greg, you need to think about Miranda. If this goes public, it won't. Not yet. Greg paused the video. I'm not trying to shame her publicly. I'm trying to make her understand she has no power left. No leverage. No future except what I allow. That's a dangerous game. She played it first. I'm just better at it. Alan sighed. What's your next move? Her clients. The married ones especially. They need to know their mistress is under investigation, that their payments are being tracked, that their wives might find out. Greg smiled without humor. Watch how fast they disappear. It took 2 days. Daryl made discreet contact with each of Jennifer's regulars, explaining the situation. Within 48 hours, every single one had cut contact, phone numbers blocked, arrangements canceled. The money Jennifer had been counting on, the money she needed to fight the custody battle and maintain her lifestyle, evaporated. Her lawyer quit next. Ted Calhoun sent a terse email citing irreconcilable differences and ethical concerns. Translation: he discovered what his client really was and wanted no part of it. Jennifer called Greg on Sunday night, her voice shaking. What did you do? Everyone's abandoning me. I did nothing. I simply made sure the truth was available to those who needed to know it. You ruined me. My reputation. Your reputation? Greg's laugh was harsh. You were a prostitute, Jennifer. You sold yourself while our daughter scrubbed floors. Don't talk to me about reputation. We never. She was crying now, the sophisticated facade crumbling. It was just companionship. Just dinners and, there's video, hours of it, including the hotels. He let that sink in. So let's not pretend you're some innocent victim here. Silence. Then, quietly, what do you want? I want you to sign over any claim to Miranda. Full custody, no visitation. I want you to admit in court what you did. I want you to disappear from our lives forever. And if I don't, then every single one of those videos gets sent to the media. Your face will be on every tabloid. Your clients' wives will receive anonymous packages. And Charles's real identity, Charles Dunbar, convicted fraud, gets reported to the authorities. Greg's voice was ice. You'll both be radioactive, unhireable, untouchable. Prison. Probably. For him at least. You're blackmailing me. I'm giving you a choice. More than you ever gave Miranda. She hung up. Greg knew she'd talk to Charles, that they'd strategize, try to find a way out. But he'd closed every exit. They were trapped, and the walls were closing in. Miranda was adjusting better than Greg had dared hope. The therapist, a compassionate woman named Janie Kent, reported that while Miranda had significant trauma, she was resilient and already showing improvement. Having her father back, feeling safe for the first time in years, was healing. They'd redecorated her room together. Walls painted her favorite lavender. New furniture, shelves for books and toys. Greg had taken her shopping, letting her pick out everything herself. The joy on her face when she chose a princess bed with a canopy had almost broken him. Dad? She asked one evening as they sat on the back patio, watching the sunset. What's going to happen to Mom and Grandpa Charles? Greg considered his answer carefully. They're going to face consequences for what they did. Legal ones, definitely. Maybe other kinds too. Good. Her voice was small but fierce. They deserve it. Do you want to see your mom again? Supervised visits. The judge said you could. No. Miranda's response was immediate. Never. She's not my mom anymore. Moms protect their kids. She didn't protect me. She hurt me. The simple clarity of it, the childish wisdom, made Greg's throat tight. Okay, baby. Then you won't have to see her. Do you think? She hesitated. Do you think you'll get married again someday? Have a new family? I have a family. You. That's enough for me. He put his arm around her shoulders. But if someday, way in the future, I met someone who made both our lives better, would that be okay with you? She thought about it. Maybe, if she was nice, and if she liked me. Anyone who didn't like you wouldn't get a first date, Greg promised. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun sank into the Pacific, painting the sky orange and purple. For the first time in 7 years, Greg felt something like peace. Not complete, there was still work to do. Scores to settle, but the beginning of it. His phone buzzed. A text from Hal. Package delivered. Stage 2 complete. Greg smiled. The package was a dossier. Compiled by Daryl and enhanced by Hal's connections, detailing every crime Charles had committed in the past 20 years. It had been delivered anonymously to the FBI's Financial Crimes Division, along with evidence of his current identity fraud and his role in Jennifer's escort operation. Charles would be arrested within the week. The arrest happened on Tuesday morning. Greg heard about it from Alan, who'd been monitoring police scanners. FBI agents had raided the cheap apartment Charles and Jennifer were renting in Culver City, taking Charles into custody on charges of identity fraud, tax evasion, and conspiracy to commit fraud. Jennifer had watched from the doorway, screaming, as they'd led her father away in handcuffs. She's alone now, Alan reported. No money, no lawyer, no support system. Her father was the mastermind. Without him, she's just lost. Greg felt nothing. No sympathy, no satisfaction. Just cold acknowledgement that the plan was working. What about her charges? The child abuse? Still pending. CPS is building their case. With Charles arrested and talking, he's already trying to make a deal. Blaming Jennifer for everything. Her situation looks grim. Alan paused. She's been trying to call you. Blocked her number. She showed up at the house yesterday. Security turned her away. Greg had installed a sophisticated security system the week before: cameras, guards, the works. No one got near Miranda without his approval. She's desperate, Alan continued, which makes her dangerous. Or pathetic, hard to tell which. Both, Greg said. Keep monitoring. I want to know her every move. That night, Greg received an email from an address he didn't recognize. The subject line, please. He almost deleted it, but curiosity made him open it. Greg, I know you hate me. I deserve it. But please, I'm begging you, don't destroy me completely. I made mistakes. Horrible mistakes. But I'm still human. I'm still Miranda's mother. Can we talk? Just once? I'll sign whatever you want. Just please don't send those videos to the press. Please don't make my father go to prison for life. He's an old man. Please. Jennifer. Greg read it 3 times. Analyzed every word. This wasn't genuine remorse, this was panic. A cornered animal begging for mercy. He thought about Miranda's wrists, the rope marks that were finally fading. Her nightmares. Waking up screaming that Grandpa Charles was tying her up again. The years of abuse and neglect. He deleted the email without responding. 2 days later, Jennifer showed up at Miranda's school. Greg got the call from the principal, Priscilla Ames, at 2 p.m. Mr. Evans, there's been an incident. Your ex-wife tried to pick up Miranda. She was very upset when we refused. Security had to escort her off campus. We've documented everything and filed a report. Greg's vision went red. Is Miranda okay? Shaken, but safe. She's in my office now. She says she doesn't want to see her mother. I'm on my way. He broke every speed limit getting there. Miranda was pale when he arrived, clutching a stuffed animal he'd bought her last week. The principal explained that Jennifer had appeared at dismissal, demanding to see her daughter, claiming she had rights. She was screaming, Miranda whispered, saying you'd brainwashed me, that I belonged to her. Everyone was staring. Greg pulled her close, rage coursing through him. Jennifer had crossed a line. This wasn't about him anymore, this was direct attack on Miranda's sense of safety. She won't come near you again, he promised. I'll make sure of it. That night, Greg made a call he'd been avoiding. To a man he'd met in Qatar, a fixer named Eugene Hurley, who specialized in making problems disappear. Not through violence, Eugene was too smart for that, but through pressure, leverage, and fear. I need someone convinced to leave Los Angeles, Greg said. Permanently. Eugene's voice was smooth. Convinced? How permanent are we talking? She needs to understand that staying means consequences. Legal ones, social ones, maybe physical if she doesn't get the message. Greg outlined the situation. Eugene listened. This woman violated a custody order by approaching your daughter at school? Yes. That's a crime. You could have her arrested. I could. But I want her gone. Out of our lives. Scared enough to never come back. I can arrange that. It'll cost you. I don't care. Name your price. They negotiated briefly. The price was steep, but Greg would have paid 10 times as much. Miranda's safety was worth everything. Give me 72 hours, Eugene said. Your problem will relocate voluntarily. Greg hung up and stood at his bedroom window, looking out at the ocean. He was crossing lines now, moving beyond legal retribution into something darker. Hal would disapprove. Alan would be furious. But Miranda had cried herself to sleep tonight, terrified her mother would steal her from school. Some lines needed to be crossed. Act 3. Eugene worked fast. On Friday evening, Jennifer's apartment was visited by 3 men who explained, very clearly and with visual aids, what would happen if she remained in Los Angeles. The visual aids included photographs of her with various clients, copies of FBI documents about Charles, and a particularly creative video editing that made it look like Jennifer had been caught in a sting operation. It was all smoke and mirrors, psychological warfare. But Jennifer didn't know that. By Saturday morning, she'd packed her few belongings and bought a one-way bus ticket to Phoenix. Eugene's people followed to make sure she got on the bus. They'd continue monitoring her for the next month, ensuring she stayed away. It's done, Eugene reported. She's gone. Crying the whole way to the station, but she got on that bus. Greg felt the tension drain from his shoulders. Thank you. One more thing. She left something for you. I had my people retrieve it before she left. A package arrived that afternoon. Inside was a handwritten letter and Miranda's birth certificate. The letter was incoherent, rambling, full of accusations and pleas and threats. But the last paragraph made Greg's blood freeze. You think you've won, but you don't know everything. Miranda isn't even yours. I had an affair before Qatar, got pregnant, didn't tell you. You raised another man's kid all these years. You sacrificed for a stranger's daughter. How does that feel? Enjoy your victory. Jay. Greg stared at the words, his world tilting. Not his daughter. Miranda wasn't his biological child. 7 years of sacrifice, of missing her childhood, of building a future all for a lie. He looked at the birth certificate. His name was listed as father, but that meant nothing if Jennifer had lied. His phone was in his hand before he realized it, calling Hal. I need a paternity test. Discreet. Immediate. Hal heard something in his voice. What happened? Greg read the letter aloud. Silence on the other end. Jesus, Hal finally said. Greg, even if it's true, I need to know. Okay. I'll arrange it. But brother, listen to me. Biology doesn't make a father. You know that, right? You saved that girl. You love her. That's what matters. I need to know, Greg repeated. The test was done on Sunday. A simple cheek swab from Miranda told it was from medical records and a blood draw from Greg. The lab Hal used was expensive and guaranteed results within 24 hours. Those 24 hours were the longest of Greg's life. He went through the motions, made Miranda breakfast, took her to the beach, watched movies with her. But his mind was spinning. What if Jennifer was telling the truth? What if everything he'd done, every sacrifice, was based on a lie? And worse, would it change how he felt about Miranda? The answer came Monday evening. Hal delivered it in person, sitting across from Greg in the study while Miranda did homework upstairs. Results are in. Hal's expression was unreadable. Greg's hands were shaking. And, you're not her biological father. The words hit like bullets. Greg closed his eyes, breathing through the pain. Not his daughter. Not his blood. Jennifer's final revenge. The truth that undermined everything. There's more, Hal said quietly. I did some digging. The affair Jennifer referenced? It was with Roberto. Greg's eyes snapped open. What? She knew Roberto before you left for Qatar. They were seeing each other while you were still stateside, before Miranda was born. Roberto is Miranda's biological father. The irony was crushing. The boyfriend living in the guest house was the real father. The man who'd suggested boarding school for Miranda, who dismissed her, who'd lived in luxury while she suffered, that was her actual dad. Does he know? Greg's voice was hoarse. No. Jennifer never told him. She married you for stability, for the military benefits, then played Roberto for fun. When you went to Qatar and the money started flowing, she brought Roberto back into her life, but kept the truth hidden. Hal leaned forward. She's a sociopath, Greg. She compartmentalized everything. You were the provider. Roberto was the excitement. Miranda was the inconvenience. Greg stood, walked to the window. Below, he could see the pool lights glowing in the darkness. The mansion he'd bought for his family. Except it wasn't his family. Never had been. What are you going to do? Hal asked. I don't know. You could tell Roberto. Force him to take responsibility. And what? Hand Miranda over to the man who wanted her gone? To Jennifer's partner in neglect? Greg shook his head. That helps no one. You could tell Miranda. She's 12. She's been through enough trauma. Greg turned from the window. Biology doesn't make a family, Hal. You said that yourself. I did, and I meant it. But you need to process this. It's a betrayal, Greg. Another massive betrayal on top of everything else. I know. Greg's voice cracked. God, I know. But Miranda, she calls me Dad. She trusts me. She's healing because she feels safe with me. What does it matter whose DNA she has? I'm the one who came back for her. I'm the one who saved her. That's true. So that's what matters. That's all that matters. Greg said it with conviction, but inside, something was breaking. 7 years. 7 years of sacrifice for a child who wasn't his, while his wife fucked the real father and spent his money. Jennifer will use this, Hal warned. If she ever finds out you know, she'll use it against you in court. Claim fraud, fight for custody, based on you not being the biological parent. Then she doesn't find out. We keep this between us. The birth certificate has my name. Legally, I'm Miranda's father. That's enough. Hal studied him. You're sure about this? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. After Hal left, Greg sat in the dark study, letting himself feel it all, the betrayal, the rage, the grief for something he'd never really had. Then he locked it away in a box deep inside himself, next to all the other pain from the past 7 years. Miranda knocked on the door. Dad, are you okay? He turned, and there she was, dark eyes worried, skinny arms wrapped around herself. His daughter in every way that mattered. Come here, baby, he said. She climbed into his lap like she was 6 instead of 12, tucking her head under his chin. Did something bad happen? No, nothing bad. I was just thinking. About Mom? About how lucky I am to have you. She squeezed him tighter. I'm the lucky one. You saved me, Dad. You're my hero. Greg held her, this child who wasn't his blood but was absolutely his daughter, and felt his resolve harden into diamond. Jennifer's final betrayal wouldn't destroy him. It would fuel him. She thought she'd delivered a killing blow. Instead, she'd shown him exactly how far he was willing to go. Charles's trial was fast-tracked due to his previous record and flight risk. Alan kept Greg updated as the case progressed. Charles had tried to make a deal, blaming Jennifer for everything, but the evidence was overwhelming. Identity fraud, tax evasion, money laundering, the charges stacked up. He was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. Greg watched the sentencing via live stream, Alan beside him in the office. Charles looked old and broken as the judge read the sentence, his silver hair disheveled, his expensive clothes replaced by an orange jumpsuit. 15 years, Alan said. He'll be in his 80s when he gets out, if he lives that long. Good. Greg felt no sympathy. What about Jennifer's charges? The DA is pushing forward with child endangerment and financial fraud. With Charles gone and you having full custody, she has no leverage. She's looking at 5 to 10 years. She's in Phoenix, for now, but there's a warrant out. She'll be extradited for trial. Greg nodded. The plan was working. Charles in prison, Jennifer facing the same, both of them destroyed. But it wasn't enough. Not after that letter. Not after learning the truth. He wanted them to understand the full scope of what they'd lost. The idea came to him while watching Miranda at her piano lesson, an activity she'd begged for, and he'd immediately arranged. She was talented, her small fingers dancing over the keys, her face lit with joy. This was what childhood should look like, what he'd bought with his sacrifice. Jennifer and Charles had stolen this from her for years. They'd stolen her childhood, her safety, her happiness, and they'd done it while living off his money, in his house, betraying him in the most fundamental ways. They needed to see what they'd destroyed, what they'd lost. Greg called Roberto. It took 3 tries before the block number forced him to answer. What? Roberto's voice was sullen. We need to talk. In person. I'm done with all that crazy shit. I left LA. You're Miranda's biological father, Greg said calmly. I have the DNA test to prove it. Silence. Then, what the fuck are you talking about? Jennifer's affair with you resulted in a pregnancy. Miranda is yours, not mine. I thought you should know. That's impossible. Jenny said she was on birth control. She said, she lied. She's a professional liar. Comes naturally to her. Greg kept his voice conversational. So, congratulations, Roberto. You have a daughter, one you suggested sending to boarding school, one who was tied up and abused while you lived in my guest house. Your daughter, I didn't know she was mine. I would never. But you did know she existed. You knew she was being mistreated. And you did nothing. Greg paused. So, here's what's going to happen. You're going to provide a DNA sample to confirm paternity. Then you're going to sign away all parental rights, permanently and irrevocably. Because you don't deserve to be her father, biological or otherwise. And if I refuse, then I make sure every potential employer, every woman you date, every person in your life knows you're a deadbeat dad who ignored child abuse. I have the resources and the motivation. Your choice. Roberto's breathing was harsh over the phone. You're a psycho. I'm a father. There's a difference. Greg ended the call. 3 days later, Roberto provided the DNA sample and signed the paperwork Alan had prepared. He waived all parental rights, acknowledged he'd never acted as Miranda's father, and agreed to never contact her. In exchange, Greg agreed not to pursue him for child support or publicize his identity. It was the last loose and tied off. Jennifer's extradition happened in October, 3 months after Greg's return. She fought it, but Phoenix authorities were happy to ship her back to California to face charges. Greg didn't attend her arraignment. He had better things to do, like Miranda's soccer game, but Alan sent him the details. Jennifer had aged badly in 3 months. Her blonde highlights had grown out, showing dark roots. She'd lost weight, the expensive curves deflating into gauntness. Her public defender looked exhausted before the trial even started. The trial itself was a formality. The evidence was overwhelming. Medical reports detailing Miranda's injuries, testimony from teachers and neighbors, financial records showing misappropriation of funds, video evidence of Jennifer's escort work. Even Roberto, furious at being used, testified against her. Miranda didn't have to testify. The judge ruled her previous testimony and the physical evidence sufficient. Greg was grateful she didn't need to face Jennifer again. The jury deliberated for 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. Sentencing came a week later. Judge Spaulding, the same judge from the custody hearing, showed no mercy. Mrs. Evans, you were entrusted with the care of a child. Instead of protecting her, you exploited her. Instead of nurturing her, you neglected her. Instead of loving her, you treated her as an inconvenience to your criminal enterprises. The judge's voice was ice. This court sentences you to 10 years in state prison for child endangerment, 5 years for fraud to run concurrently, and permanent termination of your parental rights. You will never see your daughter again. Jennifer collapsed, screaming. Bailiffs had to drag her from the courtroom. Greg watched it all via live stream. Miranda safely at school, unaware that her mother's fate was being sealed. When it was over, he closed his laptop and sat in silence. It was done. Jennifer would serve 10 years, Charles 15. Both would emerge as elderly, broken people with criminal records that would haunt them forever. Their lives were effectively over. But it still wasn't enough. Greg's final move came on a cold December evening, 6 months after his return from Qatar. He drove to the federal prison where Charles was housed, a grim facility in the desert 2 hours from LA. Visiting hours were nearly over, but his name was on Charles's approved list of detail arranged through Alan's connections. Charles was led into the visiting room in shackles, his orange jumpsuit hanging loose on his frame. Prison had aged him decades. He sat down across from Greg, separated by bulletproof glass, and picked up the phone with shaking hands. "Why are you here?" His voice was a rasp. "To tell you what you destroyed," Greg said calmly. "To make sure you understand exactly what you lost. I lost everything. My freedom, my daughter, my life. Are you here to gloat? No. I'm here to give you the truth." Greg leaned forward. "Miranda is thriving. She's in therapy, healing from what you did to her. She plays piano now. She's on a soccer team. She has friends and hobbies and a father who actually loves her. Every day, she becomes more the person she was meant to be, the person you tried to break." Charles's face twisted. She deserved discipline. She deserved love. And she's getting it now. From me. Not from you. Not from Jennifer. You had years to be a grandfather, to protect her, to care for her. Instead, you tortured a child for your own sadistic pleasure while stealing my money. Your money? Charles laughed bitterly. That's all you care about? Money? No. I care about my daughter. The money was just the means to give her a better life. You and Jennifer turned it into something ugly. Greg set a folder on the counter. This is a photo album. Miranda's last 6 months. Soccer games, piano recitals, birthday party, Halloween. I'm leaving it with the prison. You can look at it and see exactly what you'll never have. A relationship with her. Her forgiveness. Her love. Charles stared at the folder like it was a snake. Why would you do this? Because you need to understand what you lost isn't just freedom. You lost the privilege of knowing an amazing kid, of being part of her life, of mattering to her. Greg stood. She doesn't ask about you. She doesn't miss you. You're nothing to her now. And you'll be nothing for the rest of your life. That's your real punishment. He turned to leave. Charles's voice stopped him, cracking with something that might have been tears. Tell her I'm sorry. Greg looked back. No, she doesn't need your apology. She needs you to not exist. And As far as she's concerned, you don't. He walked out, leaving Charles with the phone still pressed to his ear and tears streaming down his face. A month later, Greg made a similar trip to the women's prison where Jennifer was housed. She looked worse than Charles Gaunt, her hair chopped short, dark circles under her eyes. She picked up the phone with desperate eagerness. "Greg, thank God. I knew you'd come. I knew you still. I'm here to tell you something," he interrupted. "Then I'm leaving and I'm never coming back." Her face fell. "Please, Greg, I made mistakes, but I'm still her mother." "No, you're not. You signed away your rights. The judge terminated your parental claim. Legally, biologically, in every way that matters, you are no longer Miranda's mother." "Biologically?" Jennifer's eyes narrowed. "What does that mean?" "I know about Roberto. I know he's her biological father. I have the DNA test." Greg watched her face drain of color. "Your final attempt to hurt me, it failed. Because biology doesn't make a parent. Love does. Care does. Sacrifice does. All the things you never gave her. You knew?" Her voice was a whisper. "I knew. And it changed nothing. She's my daughter, Jennifer. Mine. The one I saved from you. The one I'm raising to be strong and kind and nothing like you. Roberto. Does he know?" "He knows. He signed away his rights too. Neither of you deserve her." Greg stood. "Miranda doesn't ask about you either, by the way. She's happy. She's thriving. She's everything you tried to prevent her from being. And you get to spend the next 10 years knowing that while you rot in here, she's living her best life. Without you." Jennifer lunged at the glass, screaming. "You can't keep her from me. She's mine. I carried her. You tortured her. Goodbye, Jennifer. Enjoy your cell." He walked out as guards restrained her, her screams echoing down the corridor. He felt nothing. No satisfaction, no anger. Just cold finality. It was over. Truly over. Greg returned home to find Miranda waiting by the door, having been dropped off by her friend's mother from soccer practice. She threw herself into his arms, muddy cleats and all. "We won. 4-2. I scored a goal. That's amazing, baby." He swung her around, her laughter filling the entrance hall of the mansion that finally felt like home. "Can we celebrate? Pizza and ice cream?" "Absolutely. Go clean up. I'll order." She raced upstairs, and Greg pulled out his phone. But before he could call the pizza place, it buzzed with a text from Hal. "Heard you visited the prisons. You get your closure." Greg considered the question. Closure seemed too simple a word for what he'd achieved. Justice? Revenge? Protection? He typed back, "I got what I needed. They understand what they lost. That's enough. Good. You and Miranda deserve peace now." Peace. The words settled over him like a blanket. For 7 years, he'd lived in chaos and danger, sacrifice and suffering. Then he'd come home to betrayal and abuse, setting off a chain of events that had destroyed 2 lives and rebuilt 1. Now, maybe, there could be peace. Miranda thundered back downstairs, clean and wearing her favorite pajamas, even though it was only 6 p.m. "I'm starving. Can we get the works on the pizza? With extra cheese? Whatever you want." They ordered, then settled on the couch together. Miranda pulled out her homework math problems she actually understood now, with regular tutoring and a father who helped instead of a grandfather who punished mistakes. "Dad," she said as she worked on fractions. "Yeah, baby? I was thinking, maybe for Christmas we could go somewhere? Like a trip? Just us. Where do you want to go?" "I've never seen snow. Can we go somewhere with snow?" Greg thought about it. 7 years in the desert heat, then California sunshine. Maybe they both needed something different, something clean and new. "How about Colorado? We could go skiing. I'll teach you." Her face lit up. "Really? You know how to ski?" "Learned in the military. I'm probably rusty, but we can figure it out together." "Just us? No one else?" He heard the real question. No Jennifer, no Charles. No one to ruin it. Just us. Father-daughter trip. She hugged him tight. "I love you, Dad. I love you too, baby. More than anything." The pizza arrived, and they ate it while watching a movie. Miranda had picked some animated thing about a girl and her dragon. Greg barely paid attention to the plot. He was too focused on his daughter, laughing at the jokes, gasping at the adventure, completely absorbed in the story. This was what he'd fought for. Not the mansion, not revenge, not even justice. Just this a safe, happy kid who could be a kid. Everything else was just the price of admission. Epilogue. 5 years later, Greg stood in the Pacific Palisades mansion's backyard, watching 17-year-old Miranda accept her high school diploma with honors. She'd invited friends over for a celebration, and the pool area was filled with teenagers laughing, swimming, enjoying the California summer. Miranda found him by the grill, where he was managing burgers and hot dogs. She'd grown tall, beautiful, confident, nothing like the terrified 12-year-old he'd found in this same house 5 years ago. "Speech time?" she asked. "You want me to embarrass you in front of your friends? You're my dad. Embarrassing me is in the job description." He laughed and clinked his beer against her lemonade. "Fair enough. I'm proud of you, baby. You've worked so hard. Full ride to USC. Pre-law track, all of it. You're amazing. I learned from the best." She hugged him. "Thank you, Dad. For everything. For saving me. For being here. For being you. Being your father is the greatest privilege of my life." She pulled back, her expression serious. "I know I'm not. I know about the DNA test. I found the paperwork last year when I was looking for my birth certificate for college applications." Greg's world tilted. "Miranda, it doesn't matter," she interrupted. "You're my dad. You always will be. Biology is just science. Family is choice. And you chose me. You came back for me. You saved me. That's what matters." He pulled her into another hug, his eyes stinging. "You know about your biological father, Roberto?" "Yeah, I looked him up. He seems like kind of a loser, honestly." She shrugged. "I don't need him. I have you. You'll always have me." "I know." She smiled. "Oh, and I decided on my law specialization. Family law. I want to help kids like me. Kids who need someone to fight for them." Pride swelled in Greg's chest. "You're going to be incredible. I learned from watching you." She kissed his cheek and rejoined her friends. Greg stood alone for a moment, processing. She knew. She'd known for a year and never said anything because it didn't matter to her. He was her father, and she was his daughter, and that was the end of the story. His phone buzzed. A notification from the California Department of Corrections. Jennifer was being released in 6 months for good behavior, having served just over 5 years of her sentence. Greg deleted the notification without concern. Jennifer was no threat anymore. She'd signed away her rights. Miranda was 17, almost an adult, and had no interest in reconnecting. Whatever Jennifer did with her life after prison, it wouldn't involve them. Charles had another 10 years to serve. By the time he got out, Miranda would be 27, established in her career, possibly married with kids of her own. Grandchildren he'd never meet. A legacy he'd destroyed with his own hands. That was justice. Not the legal kind, though that had been satisfying, but the natural kind, the kind where bad choices led to irreversible consequences. Greg flipped the burgers and watched his daughter laugh with her friends, comfortable in her own skin, safe in the knowledge that she was loved and protected. 7 years in Qatar had taught him how to build foundations that would last. 5 years at home had taught him that the best foundation he'd ever built was the one between him and Miranda. Everything else, the money, the mansion, the revenge, was just scaffolding. This was the structure that mattered. This was home. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there. Welcome back to another episode of Infidelity Tales Lab. We're thankful for your continued viewership. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? We love knowing our global reach. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. Fractures. Vincent Reynolds stood at the edge of his meticulously landscaped backyard, admiring the sunset while nursing a glass of bourbon. The sprawling property, a testament to his 20 years of work as a military intelligence officer turned private security consultant, stretched before him like a kingdom. At 52, Vincent had built a life most would envy. A beautiful home in Northern Virginia, 2 children in college, and respect in both government and private sectors. The sound of laughter drifted through the evening air. Vincent turned to see his wife, Dominique, sitting on the patio with her phone pressed to her ear, her face illuminated by something more than just the setting sun. Vincent had seen that expression before, not directed at him for years, but he recognized it nonetheless. The intimate smile, the hushed tones, the way her fingers twirled her dark hair. "I should go. He's standing right there," Dominique whispered, ending the call abruptly when she noticed Vincent watching. "Just Marissa from book club," she explained, sliding the phone into her pocket. Vincent nodded, his face betraying nothing. Marissa from book club. The same excuse for the past 3 months. The same lie that had worn thin weeks ago when Vincent had first noticed the signs. Late nights, new clothes, renewed interest in fitness, and the distinctive scent of unfamiliar cologne that sometimes lingered on her clothes. Their 25-year marriage had weathered many storms, his long deployments, the stress of raising their children, Noah and Sophia, and the challenge of reinventing himself in civilian life. But this was different. Vincent knew the landscape of deception better than most. His career had been built on identifying falsehoods and extracting truths. Noah called, Vincent said, changing the subject. He's excited about bringing his new girlfriend to the family reunion next month. "Oh, that's wonderful," Dominique replied, her interest seemingly genuine. Their son, now 22 and in his final year of university, had always been closer to his mother. Did he mention if Sophia would make it? Vincent shook his head. "Still in Europe with her research team. Says she'll try, but it's not looking promising." Their daughter, 24 and brilliant, had inherited Vincent's analytical mind and Dominique's determination. Currently pursuing her doctorate in infectious disease research, Sophia had always been Daddy's girl, observant, perceptive, and fiercely loyal. That night, as Dominique slept beside him, Vincent lay awake, mentally compiling the evidence he'd gathered over recent weeks. The text messages he'd seen reflected on their bedroom window while she texted in the bathroom. The credit card statements showing lunch charges for two at hotels where no business meetings were scheduled. The GPS history on her car that didn't match her stories. Vincent had never intended to spy on his wife, but 20 years in intelligence had made certain habits second nature. Observation, pattern recognition, threat assessment. He knew who the man was. Preston Harlow, 48, recently divorced, a pharmaceutical sales executive who had met Dominique at a charity gala 6 months ago. Preston with his Italian suits and Mediterranean yacht photos on social media. Preston who had never served his country or known true sacrifice. Preston who now enjoyed the fruits of Vincent's labor. Vincent Reynolds closed his eyes, not in defeat, but in calculation. There would be no confrontation, no desperate pleas or marriage counseling. That wasn't his way. Instead, as he had done countless times in his career, Vincent began constructing a mental blueprint, meticulously detailed and precisely timed. Only this blueprint wasn't for a military operation or a security protocol. It was for something much more personal. Chapter 2. Confirmation. The week-long family reunion at Lake Anna was a tradition established by Vincent's parents decades ago, bringing together the extended Reynolds family each summer. This year, it coincided perfectly with Vincent's plans. The lakeside resort hummed with activity as family members from across the country converged, renting cabins clustered around the main lodge. Vincent had deliberately secured 3 cabins, one for himself and Dominique, one for Noah and his girlfriend, and a third that ostensibly remained empty, awaiting Sophia's potential arrival. Vincent watched from the deck of the main lodge as Preston's silver BMW pulled into the resort's parking area. Right on schedule, Dominique had claimed she needed a drive separately due to errands on the way. The reunion provided the perfect cover. Her lover could easily blend in among distant relatives and family friends. "Vincent, how long has it been?" Preston approached with practiced confidence, extending his hand as though they were old acquaintances rather than strategic introductions orchestrated by Dominique over the past few months. "Preston, good to see you," Vincent replied with calculated warmth, shaking the man's hand firmly. "Dominique mentioned you might stop by. Wouldn't miss it." Preston smiled, his perfect veneers gleaming in the sunlight. Your family reunions are legendary, according to her. Vincent nodded. 27 years running. My father started the tradition before he passed. Preston's eyes darted around, clearly searching for Dominique. Beautiful place. I can see why you keep coming back. Family is everything, Vincent replied, voice steady despite the rage simmering beneath his composed exterior. The day progressed with forced pleasantries, Vincent maintaining his role as gracious host while observing every interaction between his wife and her lover. Their attempts at discretion were almost insulting in their transparency. Brief touches when passing drinks, knowing glances across the picnic area, and synchronized bathroom breaks that lasted suspiciously long. By evening, most family members had gathered around a massive bonfire on the beach. Vincent stood apart, nursing a whiskey when Noah approached, his girlfriend Tessa lingering behind. "Dad, can we talk?" Noah asked, his expression serious beyond his years. "Of course, son." Noah guided them away from the crowd. "I know about Mom and Preston." Vincent said nothing, watching his son's face carefully. "She told me a few weeks ago," Noah continued. "She said you two haven't really been married in any real way for years. Just going through the motions." Vincent took a measured sip of his whiskey. "And you believe that?" "I've seen how you are, Dad. Always distant, always working. Mom says you checked out of the marriage years ago." Noah's voice hardened. "Preston actually listens to her. He makes her happy." Vincent absorbed the blow without flinching. "I see. I wanted you to know that I know, and that it's okay if you guys split up. People grow apart." Noah shifted uncomfortably. "Preston's actually pretty cool. He's already offered to help me get an internship at his company." Vincent nodded slowly. "That's generous of him." "Yeah, well," Noah shrugged, looking away. "He's a better father anyway." The words struck like precision artillery, but Vincent merely checked his watch. "I appreciate your honesty, Noah. Excuse me for a moment." Vincent walked toward the dock where Dominique stood with Preston, their silhouettes outlined against the moonlit lake. As he approached, he overheard their laughter. 15 years wasted on that loser, Dominique chuckled, leaning into Preston's embrace. "He doesn't even suspect a thing." Vincent cleared his throat, and they jumped apart like guilty teenagers. "Vincent, I didn't see you there," Dominique stammered, her face flushing. "Clearly," Vincent replied coolly. He checked his watch again. "I'm heading back to our cabin. Don't wait up." As he turned to leave, Preston called after him. "Hey, Vincent, no hard feelings, right? These things happen." Vincent paused, then simply nodded and walked away, ignoring the muffled laughter that resumed behind him. Instead of returning to the cabin, he walked to his SUV and drove away from the resort, his phone already connecting to a secure call. "Is everything in place?" he asked when the call connected. "Yes, sir," replied the voice on the other end. "All systems are ready. Activation on your command." "Good. Execute at 0600 hours. No deviations." Vincent ended the call and continued driving, his face illuminated by the dashboard lights, not in anguish, but in cold, calculated anticipation. Chapter 3. Genesis. The morning sun had barely crested the horizon when Vincent returned to the resort. He parked his SUV and walked deliberately toward the main lodge, where early risers were already gathering for coffee. He had just poured himself a cup when his phone vibrated with a news alert. At precisely the same moment, other phones throughout the lodge began chiming and buzzing as the same alert reached them. Vincent watched impassively as people's expressions morphed from sleepy indifference to shock. "Oh my God," gasped an elderly aunt, staring at her screen. "Preston Harlow is a terrorist?" "What?" someone else exclaimed, gathering around her phone. Vincent sipped his coffee and observed as the news spread like wildfire through the gathering. Headlines screamed across every screen. "Breaking. Pharmaceutical executive Preston Harlow linked to bioweapon development. Top secret documents reveal Harlow Pharmaceuticals tested illegal compounds on unwitting patients. FBI raids Harlow residence and corporate headquarters." Accompanying the headlines were photos of Preston being led away in handcuffs from a location that, to the untrained eye, appeared recent. In reality, Vincent knew these were carefully doctored images created by former colleagues still indebted to him. Dominique burst into the lodge, her face ashen. "Have you seen the news? This can't be real." Vincent regarded her calmly. "Shocking, isn't it? But it's impossible. I know Preston. He wouldn't." She stopped abruptly, realizing her mistake. "Know him well, do you?" Vincent asked, his voice eerily gentle. Before she could respond, federal agents flooded into the lodge, their FBI jackets unmistakable. Leading them was Special Agent Derek Walsh, a man who owed his career and his life to Vincent after a classified operation in Kandahar 12 years earlier. "Preston Harlow?" Walsh called out, scanning the room. All eyes turned to the entrance where Preston stood frozen, having just arrived from his cabin. His face drained of color as he registered the agents and the situation unfolding. "Preston Harlow, you're under arrest for conspiracy against the United States, illegal weapons development, and treason," Walsh announced, advancing toward him. "This is insane. I've done nothing wrong." Preston protested as agents surrounded him. "Vincent, tell them this is a mistake." Vincent merely sipped his coffee, watching as Preston's gaze shifted from pleading to dawning comprehension. "You," Preston whispered. "You did this." Vincent remained silent as the agents handcuffed Preston and began reading him his rights. "How could you?" Dominique hissed at Vincent, her eyes wild with panic. "What have you done?" "Me?" Vincent replied softly. "I've simply been a dedicated civil servant all my life. I report threats when I see them." He nodded toward Agent Walsh, who was now approaching Dominique. "Mrs. Reynolds? We have some questions about your relationship with Mr. Harlow," Walsh stated professionally. "We've discovered numerous communications between you suggesting you may have been aware of his activities." "That's ridiculous. I knew nothing about any of this." Dominique protested. "The evidence suggests otherwise," Walsh replied. "We'll need you to come with us for questioning." As agents escorted both Dominique and Preston out, Noah pushed through the crowd, his expression a mixture of confusion and betrayal. "Dad, what the hell is happening?" he demanded. Vincent placed his coffee cup down carefully. "It appears your mother and her boyfriend have been involved in something very dangerous, Noah. I'm as shocked as you are. This is bullshit. You did something, didn't you?" Noah accused, his voice cracking. Vincent met his son's gaze steadily. "I've spent my life protecting this country from threats, son. That's all I've ever done." As Noah stormed off, Vincent's phone vibrated with a text from Sophia. Phase 1 complete. Arriving tonight for Phase 2. "Well done, Dad." Vincent allowed himself the briefest smile before composing his features into an appropriate mask of concern and confusion. Around him, the family chaos provided perfect cover as he slipped away to prepare for what would come next. This was merely the beginning. Chapter 4: Revelations. 3 days after the arrests, Vincent sat across from Noah in a quiet corner of a Washington, D.C. cafe. The young man looked haggard, his eyes shadowed from sleepless nights spent watching his mother and Preston being vilified across every news outlet in the country. "The evidence is fabricated," Noah stated flatly, pushing away his untouched coffee. "I've spoken to Mom's lawyer. They can't find any actual links between Preston's company and these supposed bioweapons." Vincent nodded thoughtfully. "That's good news, then. If they're innocent, the truth will come out." "Cut the crap, Dad," Noah snapped. "You're behind this. I don't know how, but this has your fingerprints all over it." Vincent studied his son, recognizing the intelligence that had always made Noah exceptional. "Why would I do something like that?" "Revenge," Noah replied without hesitation. "Mom cheated on you, so you're destroying her life and Preston's." "It's sick." "An interesting theory," Vincent conceded. "But consider this. If I had the power to orchestrate something of this magnitude, what does that tell you about the man you've dismissed as a loser who was checked out of his marriage?" Noah fell silent, confusion crossing his features. "Did your mother ever tell you what I actually did during those years I was distant and always working?" Vincent asked quietly. "Government security consultant," Noah answered automatically. Vincent smiled thinly. "A convenient title. Tell me, what do you know about Preston beyond his sales job and his yacht?" "He's successful. He cares about Mom. Did you know he was investigated 3 years ago for selling pharmaceutical secrets to foreign entities? Vincent interrupted, sliding a file across the table. That his company has been quietly acquiring small biotech firms specializing in weaponized pathogens. Noah stared at the file, but didn't touch it. If that's true, why wasn't he arrested before? Powerful friends. Money in the right pockets. Vincent shrugged. The system isn't perfect. So what are you saying? That Mom accidentally fell in love with an actual criminal. Vincent leaned forward. I'm saying perhaps I was absent from family dinners because I was protecting our country from people exactly like Preston Harlow. And perhaps your mother's infidelity simply provided the motivation to look more closely at a man I already had concerns about. Noah's hands trembled slightly as he finally opened the file, scanning documents bearing authentic government seals and classifications. This doesn't justify framing them, he insisted, but with less conviction. I haven't framed anyone, Noah. I simply provided intelligence to the appropriate authorities. Vincent's voice remained calm. The question you should be asking is not why I would do this, but why your mother chose a man like Preston in the first place. Noah looked up sharply. What does that mean? Did you know your mother met Preston 3 years ago, not 6 months ago as she claimed? Vincent produced another document, a surveillance photo dated well before Dominique's supposed first meeting with Preston, or that she's visited his private account in the Cayman Islands twice in the past year. That's not. She wouldn't. Noah stammered. The internship he offered you? Vincent continued relentlessly. The position reports directly to a research division currently under investigation by 3 separate agencies. Noah pushed back from the table, his face pale. I don't believe you. You don't have to, Vincent replied, gathering the documents. But you might want to reconsider who the villain is in this story. As Noah stormed out of the cafe, Vincent's phone rang. The caller ID showed Sophia. He's struggling with it, Vincent reported when he answered. As expected, Sophia replied. The Swiss account transfers are complete. Are you sure about the next step? It's extreme, even for them. They chose their path, Vincent stated, his voice hardening. And Noah made his choice clear at the reunion. He's just a kid, Dad. He didn't understand. He's 22, Sophia, old enough to publicly declare another man a better father while knowing what her mother was doing. Vincent's tone brooked no argument. Actions have consequences. After ending the call, Vincent walked to his car where Derek Walsh waited. The federal charges won't stick, Walsh warned without preamble. My superiors are already questioning the evidence. They don't need to stick, Vincent replied, sliding into the passenger seat. They just needed to exist long enough to trigger the international attention. Walsh nodded grimly. Interpol has issued their own warrants based on European distribution channels linked to Harlow. That's beyond my jurisdiction and my help. I never expected the American charges to be the end of it, Vincent assured him. Just the beginning. How's the surveillance on Noah? In place. He's angry, confused. Made 3 calls to your wife's attorney after leaving you. Walsh hesitated. Are you sure about bringing him into this? He's your son. Vincent stared out the window at the Capitol dome gleaming in the distance. My son died at that reunion when he chose them over the truth. What remains is a pawn in a larger game. Walsh shook his head slightly, but said nothing more as they drove toward Vincent's next appointment, with a Russian intelligence officer who had requested this meeting through old back channels. The game was expanding precisely as Vincent had designed it to. Chapter 5, Acceleration. The exclusive private club in Georgetown provided perfect cover for Vincent's meeting with Alexei Petrov, a mid-level SVR officer operating under diplomatic cover at the Russian embassy. They sat in a wood-paneled alcove, classical music masking their conversation from potential eavesdroppers. Your wife and her lover have created quite the international incident, Alexei remarked, sipping his vodka. Moscow is particularly interested in the Novichok derivative formulas allegedly found on Harlow's servers. Imagine that, Vincent replied neutrally. Alexei smiled thinly. We both know those formulas were planted. The question is, by whom? You or someone using you? Does it matter? The evidence exists, and multiple intelligence agencies are now investigating connections that weren't on their radar before. It matters to those of us trying to determine if this is personal revenge or something more geopolitically motivated. Alexei studied Vincent carefully. Your daughter's research in Europe, so close to our Ukrainian operations, has not gone unnoticed. Vincent's expression didn't change, though internally he noted that Sophia's cover was holding perfectly. My daughter is a medical researcher, nothing more. Of course, Alexei conceded with obvious disbelief. Just as you're merely a retired security consultant. Tell me, does Noah understand the role he's playing in your chess match? The mention of his son's name from the Russians' lips sent a cold surge through Vincent, though he betrayed nothing. I wasn't aware he was playing any role. No. Alexei produced a phone showing surveillance photos. Noah entering the Russian consulate in Boston 2 hours earlier. It seems he's shopping, quite an interesting story to anyone who'll listen. Claims his father has fabricated evidence against his mother and her lover. Wants help proving it. Vincent absorbed this information with practiced calm. The desperate actions of a confused young man. Perhaps, Alexei agreed. Or the opening moves of a counterplay you didn't anticipate. We're considering hearing him out. I wouldn't recommend that, Vincent said softly, the subtle threat hanging in the air between them. Alexei chuckled. Always the protective father, despite everything. Don't worry, Vincent. We didn't let him in. But others might, the Chinese perhaps, or the Iranians. Your son is broadcasting his willingness to provide information on a decorated American intelligence operative in exchange for help exonerating his mother. That makes him valuable. And dangerous, Vincent added. Indeed. Alexei finished his drink. Dominique has been moved to a secure facility pending additional questioning. Diplomatic pressure from 3 countries has escalated her case beyond standard channels. This was news to Vincent. Which countries? Germany, France, and surprisingly, Japan. All places where Harlow Pharmaceuticals has subsidiaries currently under inspection. Alexei stood to leave. Whatever game you're playing, Vincent, it has expanded beyond your control. That's usually when mistakes happen. After Alexei departed, Vincent sat alone, processing this development. Noah's betrayal cut deeper than expected, but it also presented an opportunity to accelerate the timetable. Vincent placed a call to a secure line. Change of plans. Activate Protocol Judas immediately. Across town, Sophia Reynolds received the message while monitoring communications from a safe house established weeks earlier. Unlike her brother, Sophia had never been fooled by her mother's facade. Growing up watching Dominique manipulate her father had forged Sophia's unwavering loyalty and her willingness to participate in Vincent's intricate revenge plan. Sophia initiated a sequence of encrypted commands that would trigger digital tripwires planted throughout Dominique's and Preston's digital lives. Within hours, every dark secret they had tried to bury would begin surfacing in carefully orchestrated revelations. Meanwhile, Noah paced his hotel room, furious after being turned away from the Russian consulate. His phone rang, a blocked number. "Hello," he answered cautiously. "Noah Reynolds?" An accented voice inquired. "This is a friend. I understand you're looking for help regarding your mother's situation." "Who is this?" "Someone who shares your concern about the evidence against Preston Harlow and Dominique Reynolds. Perhaps we could meet?" Noah hesitated only briefly before agreeing to the meeting, unaware that the call originated from a team operating under Vincent's direct control. The trap was set. That evening, as news broke of additional evidence linking Preston to biological weapons research in North Korea, Vincent sat in his study reviewing the final stages of his plan. On his desk lay photographs, not of Dominique or Preston, but of his children. Noah, as a boy, looking up at Vincent with adoration. Sophia, graduating with honors. A family that once seemed perfect. For a brief moment, Vincent allowed himself to feel the weight of what was being lost in his pursuit of justice. Then he thought of the family reunion, of the public humiliation, of 15 years being dismissed as wasted on a loser, and his resolve hardened once more. By tomorrow, there would be no turning back for any of them. Chapter 6. Escalation. The abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Baltimore had once housed medical supplies, an ironic setting for Noah's meeting with a mysterious contact who had promised evidence exonerating his mother. He arrived early, scanning the cavernous space with growing unease. "Hello." His voice echoed through the emptiness. "Is anyone here?" Footsteps sounded behind him. Noah turned to see a man emerge from the shadows, mid-30s, military bearing, carrying a leather briefcase. "Mr. Reynolds," the man greeted him. "Thank you for coming. You said you have information about my mother's case," Noah prompted, keeping his distance. "Indeed." The man placed the briefcase on a dusty countertop. "But first, I need to understand why you believe your father fabricated evidence." Noah hesitated. "Because I know my father. He's calculating, cold. He found out my mom was having an affair, and instead of confronting it like a normal person, he did this." "Interesting." The man nodded thoughtfully. "And you believe your father possesses the capability to frame two innocent people so thoroughly that multiple intelligence agencies are involved?" "He worked in government intelligence for decades," Noah replied. "He has connections." "Impressive for a man you described to others as a loser," the man observed, his tone hardening slightly. Noah froze, the implications sinking in. "Wait, who are you really?" The warehouse lights suddenly blazed to full brightness, revealing a dozen operatives in tactical gear positioned throughout the space. Among them stood Sophia, her expression grim as she approached her brother. "Hello, Noah," she said quietly. "Sophia? What the hell is going on?" Noah demanded, panic rising in his voice. "Education," she replied simply. "You've spent years believing Mom's version of reality. Now you get to see the truth." The man with the briefcase opened it to reveal a sophisticated computer setup. With a few keystrokes, the warehouse walls illuminated with projected images, surveillance photos, documents, and video footage. "Preston Harlow," the man began, gesturing to the displays. "Former Naval Intelligence officer dishonorably discharged in 2007 for selling classified information. Reinvented himself in the pharmaceutical industry using contacts from his military days." "That's not." Noah started to protest. "Your mother met Preston in 2020 during a classified operation your father was leading in Vienna," Sophia continued, advancing the displays to show dated photographs of Dominique and Preston at a gala. "She was there as Dad's cover. Preston was there representing interests that directly opposed American security." Noah shook his head in disbelief. "Mom isn't a spy. She's an interior designer." "Mom is whatever she needs to be," Sophia corrected him. "Interior designer. Loving wife. Spy. Did you never wonder how her small design firm could afford her lifestyle? How she always seemed to travel to the same cities where Dad had operations?" The displays changed to financial records, showing millions flowing through accounts in Dominique's name. "Your mother has been selling information from Dad's operations for years," Sophia stated flatly. "At first to fund her lifestyle, later because she developed ideological sympathies with Preston's employers." "This is insane," Noah whispered, backing away. "Dad put you up to this. This is all part of his revenge." "Is this revenge too?" The man activated a final display showing Noah himself, meeting with Preston at his company headquarters months before the family reunion. "You were being recruited, Noah, not for an internship, but as an asset, leveraging your resentment toward your father to gain access to his knowledge." Noah stared at the footage in horror, recognizing the meeting but seeing it through an entirely different lens. "I didn't know. I thought it was just about an internship." "You didn't want to know," Sophia corrected him. "You were so eager to believe Dad was the villain that you never questioned why Preston Harlow, a pharmaceutical executive you barely knew, would take such interest in a college student with no experience in his field." Noah sank onto a nearby crate, his world collapsing around him. "Where's Dad now?" "Completing what he started," Sophia answered. "The question is, which side are you on, Noah? Because after tonight, there's no middle ground left." Across the city, Vincent sat opposite Dominique in a sterile interview room within a federal detention facility. She looked haggard, her designer clothes exchanged for a standard-issue jumpsuit, her makeup-free face showing every one of her 50 years. I always knew you were vindictive, Vincent, but this? Dominique gestured at their surroundings. Treason charges? International warrants? All because I fell in love with someone else. Is that what you think this is about? Vincent asked mildly. What else? You couldn't stand being left, so you fabricated this fantasy that Preston and I are criminals. She leaned forward, dropping her voice. The lawyers say none of it will stick. You've overplayed your hand. Vincent smiled slightly. Did Preston ever tell you about his time in Belgrade? Or his special arrangement with the North Korean pharmaceutical program? Dominique's expression flickered briefly. More lies. Perhaps, Vincent conceded, but effective ones, judging by how quickly international agencies became involved. Tell me, do you remember a vacation we took to Lake Geneva in 2016? You insisted on that specific hotel, the one with the private boat launch. The color drained from Dominique's face. That was years ago. Indeed, during an operation tracking biological agents moving through Switzerland. Curious timing for you to suddenly desire a Swiss vacation, especially at a hotel where 3 known arms dealers were staying. Vincent tilted his head. I've overlooked so many coincidences over the years, Dominique. So many strange alignments between your social calendar and sensitive operations. You're delusional, she whispered, but without conviction. The affairs I could have forgiven, Vincent continued, as if she hadn't spoken. The disrespect, even the poisoning of Noah against me. But selling out your country? Endangering operations that cost good people their lives. His voice remained steady even as his eyes hardened. That's unforgivable. I want my lawyer, Dominique demanded, standing abruptly. By all means, Vincent agreed, also rising. Though you might want to wait until tomorrow. Tonight, Interpol is executing search warrants on 17 properties connected to you and Preston across 9 countries. Whatever they find will significantly impact your legal strategy. As Vincent turned to leave, Dominique called after him. You won't win this, Vincent. You've never understood how many friends I have, how many people would choose me over you. Noah already has. Vincent paused at the door. About Noah, you might be surprised by his current perspective. Family reunions can be so enlightening. The look of uncertainty that crossed Dominique's face was all the confirmation Vincent needed. The seeds of doubt had been planted. As he exited the facility, his phone vibrated with a message from Sophia. Noah's in. Operation Severance is go. Vincent allowed himself a genuine smile for the first time in months as he texted back a single word, execute. Chapter 7, Demolition. 3 weeks after Dominique's arrest, international news outlets exploded with a new revelation. Comprehensive evidence had emerged showing Preston Harlow's pharmaceutical empire was built on stolen research, much of it from classified military medical programs. More damning still were documented connections to bioweapon programs in multiple countries, all trails leading back to companies where Dominique Reynolds served as a silent partner or consultant. Vincent watched the coverage from a secure facility in Northern Virginia, surrounded by monitors displaying real-time reactions across global intelligence communities. Beside him sat Noah, still shell-shocked from his rapid education and his family's true history, but determined to make amends for his blind loyalty to his mother. They're saying Mom could face the death penalty, Noah said quietly, staring at a news ticker scrolling across one screen. That's unlikely, Vincent replied. She'll be offered a deal in exchange for information on Preston's network. Will she take it? Vincent considered the question. No, her ego won't allow her to implicate herself, even to save her own life. She still believes her connections will protect her. Noah shook his head in disbelief. How did I never see any of this growing up? Your mother is exceptional at compartmentalization, Vincent explained. And I deliberately kept both you and Sophia insulated from my work. Not Sophia, Noah corrected him. She's been working with you for years, hasn't she? Vincent nodded, pride evident in his expression. Since college. Her medical research position is genuine, but also provides excellent cover for intelligence gathering. The door opened and Sophia entered, carrying several tablets. It's done, she announced. Preston's lawyer just received the evidence package. He's already called 3 times requesting a meeting. And the offshore accounts? Vincent asked. Frozen. All 15 of them, Sophia confirmed. The London and Zurich properties have been seized. Mom's design firm is being raided as we speak. Vincent turned to Noah. Are you still certain you want to proceed with your part? Noah squared his shoulders. Yes, I need to make this right. Hours later, Noah sat across from his mother in the same interview room Vincent had used. Dominique brightened at the sight of her son, reaching for his hands across the table. Noah, thank God. Have you spoken to the lawyers? This nightmare. I know everything, Mom. Noah interrupted, pulling his hands back. About you and Preston. About what you've been doing all these years. Dominique's expression hardened. Your father got to you. No, Mom. The truth got to me. Noah placed a document on the table. A sworn affidavit. I'm testifying against you and Preston. About the meetings, the recruitment attempts, everything. You can't be serious, Dominique hissed. After everything I've done for you? I protected you from knowing what your father really is. A cold, calculating killer who values his missions more than his family. That's exactly what you wanted me to believe, Noah acknowledged. But now I understand why he was distant. He was protecting us from the consequences of your actions. Dominique's face contorted with rage. You ungrateful little. Save it, Mom. Noah cut her off, rising. The prosecutors have offered me immunity in exchange for my testimony. I suggest you consider a similar arrangement while it's still available. As he turned to leave, Dominique called after him. He'll discard you too, Noah. Vincent doesn't forgive betrayal. Ever. Ask him about Cairo if you don't believe me. Noah paused at the door. I already know about Cairo, Mom. The difference is I'm owning my mistakes. You're still denying yours. Across town, Vincent met with Preston's attorney in an upscale law office. The lawyer, sweating despite the powerful air conditioning, pushed a proposal across the polished table. My client is willing to provide complete details on Mrs. Reynolds' involvement in exchange for considerations regarding his sentencing, the attorney explained. Vincent reviewed the document dispassionately. Your client seems to be under the impression that this is a negotiation. Mr. Reynolds, surely you understand the value of Mr. Harlow's cooperation, the lawyer pressed. He can provide names, dates, account numbers, everything your wife did while using his business as cover. Interesting that 48 hours ago, Mr. Harlow was proclaiming both his and my wife's complete innocence, Vincent observed. Quite the reversal. The lawyer shifted uncomfortably. New evidence has created new perspectives. Indeed, Vincent slid the proposal back, untouched. Please inform Mr. Harlow that his offer is declined. The evidence against both him and my wife is more than sufficient without his cooperation. But the lawyer sputtered. Also, Vincent continued as if the man hadn't spoken. Inform him that additional information regarding his activities in Damascus in 2018 will be provided to prosecutors tomorrow morning. He might want to adjust his legal strategy accordingly. The color drained from the lawyer's face. Damascus? There's nothing in the current charges about Damascus. Not yet, Vincent agreed, standing to leave. Give Mr. Harlow my regards. That evening, Vincent convened with his team, trusted former colleagues, intelligence operatives who owed him their lives or careers, and his children. The conference room wall displayed a complex flowchart of operations spanning 2 decades. We've dismantled their financial resources, Sophia reported. Every account we know about has been frozen or seized. Their social capital is equally compromised, added Alan Merritt, a former CIA deputy director. Preston's political connections have all distanced themselves. Dominique's influential friends have gone silent. What about the unknown factors? Vincent asked. Dominique's reference to friends suggests contingencies we haven't identified. We've been monitoring all communications, Noah offered, now fully integrated into the team. Nothing unusual has been detected. Vincent nodded thoughtfully. Then we proceed to the final phase. Sophia, initiate protocol severance. As the team dispersed to execute their assignments, Vincent stood alone before the flowchart, studying the intricate connections he had spent weeks mapping and was now systematically destroying. Each node represented a relationship, an asset, a protection that Dominique and Preston had cultivated over years. One by one, The nodes on the display began changing from green to red as Vincent's team executed Protocol Severance, the complete and irreversible isolation of the targets from every resource and relationship they had ever established. By morning, Preston Harlow and Dominique Reynolds would stand entirely alone against the full force of international justice, precisely as Vincent had planned from the moment he had walked away from that family reunion 3 months earlier. Chapter 8. Isolation. 2 days before the preliminary hearing that would determine whether Preston and Dominique would be tried separately or together, Vincent received an unexpected visitor at his Virginia home. Special Agent Walsh arrived without warning, his expression grave. "We have a situation," Walsh announced without preamble. "Dominique has disappeared from federal custody." Vincent's expression didn't change. Disappeared during transfer to the courthouse for a pretrial meeting with her attorneys. Walsh ran a hand through his thinning hair. The transport vehicle was found abandoned, both agents unconscious but alive. No sign of Dominique. Vincent nodded slowly. The contingency she hinted at. Impressive. Walsh studied him carefully. "You don't seem surprised." "I'm not," Vincent admitted. "Dominique always maintains escape routes. I've been expecting something like this since her arrest. My superiors are suggesting you might be involved, creating an opportunity to deal with her personally." Vincent smiled thinly. "Your superiors credit me with too much influence over federal prisoner transportation protocols." "Maybe," Walsh conceded, "but they've authorized surveillance on you, effective immediately. Whatever history we have, Vincent, I can't interfere with that." "I wouldn't expect you to," Vincent assured him. "Tell your superiors I'll be staying right here, easily monitored. No sudden trips or unexplained absences." After Walsh departed, Vincent contacted Sophia. "Your mother has fled custody." "Right on schedule," Sophia replied, unsurprised. Facial recognition caught her boarding a private jet at a small airfield in Delaware 90 minutes ago. Destination filed as Toronto, but the flight plan diverted over Pennsylvania. "She's heading for the lake house," Vincent concluded. Predictable. She believes the emergency documents and cash are still hidden in the boathouse safe. "They are," Sophia confirmed, along with tracking devices in every bill and document. "Noah has a team standing by 20 miles from the property. Tell him to maintain position," Vincent instructed. "She won't be alone, and I want to identify everyone involved in her escape network." For the next 18 hours, Vincent performed the role of concerned, bewildered husband perfectly. He cooperated fully with FBI surveillance, made appropriate calls to attorneys expressing shock at Dominique's escape, and appeared genuinely distressed in a brief press interaction outside his home. Meanwhile, Sophia and Noah monitored Dominique's movements from their operations center. Their mother had indeed gone directly to the family's secluded lake house in upstate New York, accompanied by 2 men identified as private military contractors with ties to Preston's overseas operations. "She accessed the safe 30 minutes ago," Noah reported. "GPS trackers show movement north toward the Canadian border." "And Preston?" Vincent asked, speaking via encrypted line from his study while FBI agents monitored the exterior of his home. "Still in custody, but his attorney has filed emergency motions claiming the evidence against him is inadmissible due to your personal involvement in the investigation," Sophia answered. "The judge has scheduled a hearing for tomorrow morning." Vincent considered this information. "Preston is a distraction. Your mother is the priority now. She'll attempt to cross at a minor checkpoint using credentials from a safe. We've alerted customs discreetly," Noah confirmed. "They'll delay but not detain her. Enough to allow our team to intercept before she realizes it's a trap." "Good," Vincent approved. "I'll join you once she's secured. The surveillance on me will ease once they believe she's fled the country." 12 hours later, Dominique Reynolds sat in a Spartan room within a hunting lodge deep in the Adirondack Mountains. Her escape had proceeded flawlessly until the border crossing, where unexpected delays had forced her to divert to a secondary route. There, her security team had been efficiently neutralized by operatives she never saw, and she had found herself transported to this isolated location. The door opened, and Vincent entered alone. "I should have known," Dominique said bitterly. "Was there ever really an escape? Or Was it all your orchestration? The escape was genuine, Vincent replied, taking a seat across from her. Your connections are impressive, or were, until recently. What happens now? You turn me over to the authorities to face a show trial based on evidence you fabricated? Vincent shook his head. Nothing I presented was fabricated, Dominique. Manipulated and strategically revealed. Yes, but every document, every photograph, every financial record is authentic. Dominique's composure faltered slightly. You can't prove intent. I don't need to. The evidence speaks for itself. Vincent leaned forward. But we're not here to discuss your legal predicament. We're here to discuss Noah. Noah. Uncertainty crossed Dominique's features. What about him? He's made his choice to testify against you, which places him at considerable risk from your remaining allies. Vincent's voice hardened. I want the names of everyone in your network who might consider him a liability. Dominique laughed incredulously. You expect me to help you protect the son who betrayed me? I expect you to do one decent thing as his mother, Vincent replied evenly. But I'm prepared for your refusal. He placed a tablet on the table, displaying a video feed of Preston Harlow in his cell, sleeping fitfully. What is this? Dominique asked, confused. Preston's cell is currently pumping in a colorless, odorless compound derived from one of his own company's experimental formulas, Vincent explained clinically. At his current exposure level, he'll experience progressive neurological deterioration over approximately 6 weeks. Symptoms begin with tremors, advance to memory loss, and culminate in complete cognitive collapse. Horror dawned on Dominique's face. You're poisoning him. I'm demonstrating consequences, Vincent corrected her. The compound can be neutralized completely if administered within the next 4 hours. After that, the damage becomes irreversible. You're bluffing, Dominique challenged. You don't have access to his cell ventilation system. Vincent simply raised an eyebrow. The same way I didn't have the capability to frame 2 innocent people for international crimes. Dominique stared at the screen, watching Preston twitch in his sleep, the first subtle sign of the compound taking effect. The name's Dominique, Vincent prompted. Every contact who might target Noah. In exchange, Preston receives the antidote. And if I refuse, then I return you to federal custody, and nature takes its course with Preston. Vincent's voice was devoid of emotion. Your choice. Dominique's eyes darted between Vincent and the screen, calculation and fear warring in her expression. Finally, resignation settled over her features. There's a ledger, she said quietly. Hidden compartment in my desk at the design firm. Names, contacts, payment records, everything. Vincent nodded. Sophia will verify that information immediately. If it's accurate and complete, Preston receives treatment for an unexpected reaction to his medication. If not, he let the implication hang in the air. You become a monster, Vincent, Dominique whispered. No, Vincent corrected her, standing to leave. I've simply become what you always accused me of being. The man who puts objectives above sentimentality. The irony is, I learned it from you. As he exited, Dominique called after him. What happens to me now? Vincent paused in the doorway. You'll face trial for everything you've done. But Noah will be safe. The only gift I have left to give the son who called me a loser. The door closed with finality, leaving Dominique alone with the consequences of 15 years of deception. Chapter 9. Terminus. 6 months after Dominique's recapture, Vincent sat alone on the deck of a modest cabin overlooking the Pacific Ocean. The property, registered under a name unknown to anyone from his former life, represented his final severance from the past. Behind him, the cabin door opened as Noah emerged with 2 cups of coffee. Court TV says the jury's been deliberating for 3 days, Noah reported, handing his father a steaming mug. Analysts are split on which way they'll go. Vincent nodded, unsurprised. Your mother's defense team mounted an impressive case. The manipulated by love narrative plays well with certain jurors. Do you think she'll be acquitted? Noah asked, taking a seat beside his father. No, Vincent replied with certainty. The evidence is too comprehensive, your testimony too damaging. But she'll likely receive a lesser sentence than Preston. Preston Harlow had already been convicted on multiple counts of espionage, sentenced to life without parole at a maximum security federal penitentiary. His mysterious neurological episode during pretrial detention had left him with persistent tremors and memory lapses that humanized him to the jury, precisely as Vincent had calculated when ordering the antidote administered at the last possible moment. I spoke with Sophia this morning, Noah mentioned. Her cover in Europe has been officially restored. The agencies are satisfied that her involvement in Mom's case was strictly familial, not operational. Vincent smiled slightly. Your sister has always been adept at managing perceptions. They sat in comfortable silence, watching waves crash against the rocky shoreline below. Vincent had officially retired from all government work, his security clearances voluntarily surrendered. Noah had withdrawn from his university program, instead pursuing specialized training with former colleagues of his father, men and women who recognized the young man's potential and his need for redemption. Do you ever regret how far it went? Noah asked suddenly. The international warrants, Preston's condition, all of it. Vincent considered the question carefully. Regret suggests I would choose differently given another opportunity. I wouldn't, not even for my sake. I was collateral damage in your war against Mom. You were a casualty of your mother's decisions long before mine. Vincent corrected him gently. She poisoned you against me for years, Noah. The reunion simply forced me to acknowledge how successful she'd been. Noah winced at the memory of his cruel words. I'm sorry for what I said that night. About Preston being a better father. You believed it at the time, Vincent observed without rancor. Your mother is exceptionally persuasive. Still, Noah insisted, I should have seen through her manipulation. Perhaps, Vincent allowed, but you've more than compensated through your testimony and subsequent choices. His phone vibrated with a news alert. Vincent checked the screen, his expression unchanged as he read the notification. The verdict? Noah asked. Vincent nodded. Guilty on all counts except one. Sentencing in 3 weeks, but the minimum mandatory is 20 years. Noah exhaled slowly. It's really over then. This chapter is, Vincent agreed. Life continues. Later that evening, as Noah slept inside the cabin, Vincent received a secure call from Sophia. Congratulations, Dad, she said when he answered. Justice served. At considerable cost, Vincent noted. But worth it, Sophia asked, knowing her father well enough to understand his calculus. Vincent gazed out at the moonlight reflecting off the Pacific. They took 15 years from me, Sophia. 15 years of lies, manipulation, and betrayal. They mocked me publicly, turned my son against me, and compromised operations that cost lives. And now they have decades to contemplate the consequences of underestimating a man they dismissed as a loser, Vincent replied, his voice carrying the finality of a closed account. So yes, worth every sacrifice. Noah's healing well, Sophia observed, changing subjects. His training reports are excellent. He has potential, Vincent agreed. Different from yours, but valuable in its own way. Will you tell him about the new assignment? The consultancy? Vincent smiled slightly. When he's ready, some talents shouldn't be wasted in retirement. After ending the call, Vincent remained on the deck until dawn, watching the inexorable rhythm of waves against stone. Nature's patient demonstration that even the hardest surfaces yield eventually to persistent force. Inside the cabin, secure files waited with details of emerging threats and requested assistance from agencies that valued Vincent's particular skills. His official retirement had never been intended as an ending, merely a transformation. The man who had been publicly humiliated at a family reunion, who had nodded and checked his watch and walked away rather than causing a scene, had not been demonstrating weakness. He had been exercising the patience of a master strategist who understood that true victory required not emotional outbursts, but calculated, relentless execution. As the first light of morning touched the horizon, Vincent Reynolds opened the file and began planning his next moves. The world had not become safer during his brief retirement. There were still threats to address, still justice to dispense. And Vincent, freed from the burden of pretending to be less than he was, had never been more dangerous. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.